and welcome to Lesson 3 of this course on how to master Answer the Public. We'll soon get on to tailored searches, but first let's recap on what you learnt in Lesson 2. You learnt why you shouldn't get hung up on search volumes and to what extent search volume data is shared around different types of search terms, so commercial ones and non-commercial ones. You came to understand why it's hard to get accurate data for the kinds of questions and statement searches you'll mostly see in your Answer the Public reports, but you came away with a new way to prioritise in the form of the green gradient dots. We looked at the importance of using the full report, and hopefully you've since experimented with working from the bottom up. You learnt why it's nonsensical to use seed terms that are full of sentences. We explored that with the search around should I use moisturiser on dry skin, and you saw what happened, so you're better able to consider the phrasing of your seed terms. You also learnt why it's important to not use jargon words. You became able to think like the public and try out a number of different words as your seed. Finally, you realised what insight can be gleaned by clicking on the terms surfaced in the wheel parts of the report, from competitor insight through to additional questions people are asking. So what do I mean by tailored searches? Well, if you were going to search Google for a pair of trainers or sneakers for the gym, you've probably used it enough by now to know that in order to get to the most relevant results for you most quickly, you need to add some context to your search. And that's what I mean by tailored searches. So you might search gym trainers Bristol or gym sneakers Brooklyn if you wanted to go out and buy your shoes locally. That's tailoring by locale. Or you might tell Google a bit about who you are or who the person that you're buying for is. So tailoring by persona with searches like gym sneakers for seniors or gym trainers for women. Or you might tailor by preference with a search like gym trainers with ankle support or white gym sneakers. In reality, there's loads of ways that we tailor our searches, but in this lesson I'm going to focus on the 3 I've just given you. So that's tailoring by locale, by persona and by preference. Tailored searches by locale. So I've explained what tailoring by locale is. Some of you might call it local search. First up, where do you find these kinds of searches in your Answer the Public reports? So there's a few places. I would start by scrolling down to the alphabetical section. Here you will spot plenty of place names. I've run a report on trainers and I can see Brighton, Belfast, Bristol, Birmingham, Covent Garden, Cardiff, Dundee. I won't carry on, but hopefully you too can see all the UK locations coming through in my report. In reality, I'd probably export this as a CSV file and highlight all the relevant terms as I go. The next place I'd be looking is the near branch on the prepositions wheel. Now, in this instance, I've used the very generic word trainers as my seed term, and Google is understandably making suggestions relating to all kinds of trainers, so puppy trainers, personal trainers, waist trainers, and more. If I'd been more specific with my seed, maybe women's trainers, then I'd expect to see more relevant stuff here. But the point remains the same, and that is that this near branch can be really useful in identifying local searches. Actually, this report shows near me on pretty much every branch, which goes to show how well we all recognise that Google knows where we are when we search and will adapt so that near me makes sense. Anyway, I promise that on some reports you'll see places here rather than just me or near me, so that's another source of local search insight or searches tailored by locale. So you know where to find the insight, but you may be thinking, I don't have a store or presence in that place, so what do I care? Well, I've previously worked with clients who have commercial property teams whose job it is to find suitable locations for new stores, and this kind of data is a goldmine for them. If you add search volume, which I know I said is tricky for Answer the Public terms at the start of lesson 1, but actually in this case, the terms are a bit more obviously commercial, so you'll likely get fairly accurate volumes in the keyword planner. The data literally tells you where you have an engaged, ready-made market for your business. Okay, so on to searches tailored by persona. There's one branch in your Answer the Public report to look at to get to this insight quickly, and that's the for branch on the prepositions wheel. Straight away, you'll see some really obvious groups who are interested in your seed term. In my trainers example, you can see trainers for men, for girls, for women, for kids, for toddlers, for babies, and so on. I call these literal personas, and they make for a great data point to start building out personas. But, and here's where I think it gets really interesting, there are also what I refer to as lateral personas, things like trainers for flat feet. It's not a literal audience segment in terms of traditional demographics, but it is an interesting way to define an audience. It's super relevant to my seed, and most importantly, it's how the public is defining itself. Other examples of this in my report include for wide feet, for work, for running, for school, for the gym, for high arches, for supination, and for netball. For all of these terms, I could build out a persona and be confident in the knowledge that I'm thinking about my audience as they think about themselves. If you aren't currently working with personas in your business, this is a really good starting point. Even if you are, this data could be a useful addition in terms of building them out further. Let's have a quick look at what personas might be relevant to you or your business now. Task. Open up a new Answer the Public report and enter a seed term that's relevant. Ideally not your brand, but maybe the product or service someone would buy from you. Give it a minute to load, and now jump down to the prepositions wheel and find that for branch. How many literal personas do you get? Are you targeting or catering to the needs of all of these groups? Now, how many lateral personas do you get? And again, are you talking about your product in this way? This task is intended to be very much a starter, but I would recommend conducting further audience research around any groups you're not already aware of or targeting in order to find out more about them and build them into your marketing or business plan. Our final tailored search type is searches tailored by preference. Again, there's an obvious place within your Answer the Public report to look out for these, and that's the with and without branches on the prepositions wheel. Immediately looking at these branches, you can get an understanding of what specific features that the public is looking for or looking to avoid when starting out on a purchase journey. In my trainers example, I can see people are looking for trainers with wheels, with heels, with toes, and with arch support, also with spikes, with Velcro, and so on. Of course, some of these desired features will be specific to certain brands. I'd imagine the spikes and the stars possibly, but some of them are much broader and more relevant to all sorts of trainer retailers or manufacturers. Looking at the without branch, I can see people are keen for shoes without laces, without white soles, without logos, without heels, without backs, and lots more. Again, I've highlighted where you can find the insight, but what do you do with it? For me, there are two main uses here. Firstly, these are great ways to categorise existing products that you sell that fit the bill. On your website or elsewhere. If people are telling you that they want trainers with zips and you sell them in and amongst your broader range of trainers, you should be highlighting the ones that have zips. Secondly, whether you have a team of people working on product or service or business development, or you're doing it yourself, this insight is super powerful. If you're making trainers and you're thinking about what to create next, it's the kind of insight that you can use to ensure that you're making products led by actual consumer wants. Remember the truth element of this data. You could put a survey out to customers and ask them what they want next, or run a focus group, but this data is super quick to get to, it's free, and people are searching with these terms because they genuinely want to see products with or without these features. They've not had to think about what they might want in an artificial research environment. We're always looking for new use cases of Answer the Public, so if you use this kind of data in another way, let me know by emailing hello@searchlistening.com. That's it on tailored searches. Hopefully you've learnt something new about how people might seek out your product or service and how you can make use of the data we've highlighted. Here's a recap of what we've covered this lesson. We focused on searches tailored by locale. You now know where to look in an Answer the Public report to quickly find this local search insight, and you know how you can make use of it. We also looked at searches tailored by persona. Again, you now know where to quickly look to spot the insight in your report, and you had a chance to explore both the literal and lateral personas search data uncovers related to your product or business or service. Finally, we looked at searches tailored by preference, where to find the insight and what to do with it, from using it to determine how you group and present products within your range, to using it to inform product or service development.